Hi, I hope everyone is safe and well over this MCO and at the same time remain productive. It has been 8 weeks now. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Happy Saturday, Salam Ramadan, and welcome to our PAM online series, which is a newly launched program under PAM. So this PAM online series will be a permanent feature and will continue even after MCO is lifted. The schedule is fixed on Thursdays 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays 10 a.m. to 12 noon. So look out for emails and posters on website for upcoming online series. On behalf of PAM and CPD committee, we would like to thank everyone for supporting us on this program, and please be patient if there's a glitch. Our technical team is still beefing up the infrastructure, but I think we are almost ready now. The committee has decided that in June, we will step up the content of the program into more active participation from audience starting from June. Just a reminder, we have applied for CPD points to Lembaga Akitek Malaysia, and it is only applicable to viewers on Zoom only, not on FB Live, due to the requirements of consistent participation required by LAM. So as such, the team has provided a system whereby there will be sign-in code and sign-out codes, which will pop up on screen throughout the session. And at the end of the session, you have to fill up a questionnaire, a short questionnaire, which will be made available at the end of the session. So when the session finishes, please stay on screen to take down the link to the questionnaire. Okay, let's move on to the series today. We have a special, regular, and favorite PAM speaker, Architect Chong Lee Siong, who will be discussing on designing for fire fighting, access, and rescue from outside on buildings. Next week, there will be an addition 2 on the same topic, but it will be designing for fire fighting and access rescue from inside the building. So today is going to be from outside, next week will be from inside. This event is sponsored by Kansai. Thank you very much, Kansai. Just a little bit on the topic. The discussions on fire prevention and firefighting has always been a popular topic to architects. At PAM CPD seminars, regardless of the time of the year that we have it, either early, mid, or end, it is always full house. So, and yet, well, I personally have been following Architect Chong Lee Siong for almost 20 years now, and yet I find that there's still a lot to learn from the experts on the subject. So online series will have this topic as a regular discussions with possibly workshops or more technical requirement, workshops on more technical requirements such as calculating notional boundaries, occupancy load, or fire access ways, calculation of fire access ways, or possibly discussing on performance criteria for unique cases. So we can have those now via online series. And another note to convey to members is that from PAM Council committee members and representatives who have been representing PAM and members in meetings and discussions with government agencies, we have been receiving concerns from both sides, Bomber and from members. Bomber claiming that architects' drawings submitted are not adequately prepared. And on the other hand, we also receive concerns from members claiming that sometimes we do get comments from Bomber which are not within UBBL requirements. So there's always these two ends of a situation, which I think is very natural. So our promise to Bomber is that we will have this topic on fire throughout every year to update and keep members informed on the subject. Okay, let's begin. For today's session, we only have two parts, the presentation by the speaker and the Q&A session. I will guide you through. Before we start, a little bit of introduction on the speakers. On the speaker, actually, architect Chong Lee Siong. He received his architectural training at Deakin University, Australia, and has been operating an architectural practice under Lee Siong Architect since 1994. He is a very active member in the pursuit of study of fire safety engineering from architectural perspective. He is a member of Institute of Fire Engineers, so he can do the special report for fire performance for you if you have special unique situation. He has also contributed to the drafting of the current UBBL revision 2012 and also the guide to fire protection in Malaysia, you know, the red book. Since for the past 20 years, he has been presenting numerous papers on the interpretation of fire safety provisions in architectural design. So, so you can see why architect Chong Lee Siong is considered one of our experts on the subject at PAM. So without further ado, I now hand over the console to Lee Siong to start his presentation. Over to you, Lee Siong.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I hope everyone is home and safe and still very productive working from home. It's definitely a new normal. I was just talking to Sophie yesterday when we first started the CPD program almost 18, 20 years ago. We had this idea that CPD programs really should be so much more accessible to everybody at any time, as opposed to having to bring so many people, the logistics in order to bring so many people into one place. Just for the purpose of that 2 or 3 hours. Like today, I hear that there are about 400 over participants. So if you imagine, if you're actually doing this face to face, we will need to rent out the entire Sheraton Hotel hall to accommodate all of us. And I think this is really a very efficient way of sharing and distributing the messages around. So I think it's really good. Sometimes we do need a little bit of a crisis to push us to the next step. So I think this is really very good. All right, I'll share my screen now. This series of seminars or papers that I've written over the years, in terms of the structure, it hasn't actually changed much, because in terms of the methods of fighting fire, the concepts of fire safety, the concepts of design and all that is really very well established. The characteristic and the nature of fire has not changed. But what has changed is our built environment. As we progress into advanced methods of using buildings, we find that the codes and the bylaws, the framework in which we use to develop standardized laws, so to speak, becomes a little bit like a shoebox. We have a set of laws. We say, okay, if your building is of this purpose, you follow this set of compliances, you follow this set of laws. If your building is of that purpose, if your building is of that height, you follow that set of laws and that set of rules. But as you all know today, our buildings are really very complex, because it's just moving along to our new way of living, the advancement of society. Like as we speak now, we're using technology to be working from home. And in terms of the workspace, over the last few years or so, there's a big proliferation of co-sharing office spaces, for example. So the previous ideology of an office space being just like that, and then a place of assembly being just like that, or the restaurant being just like that, perhaps the boundary starts to get a bit blurred. Yeah, so we do, in terms of the application of the design, the safety center of designing for fire safety, we do have to have a more in-depth knowledge and appreciation of what are the concepts, the fundamental concepts of designing for fire safety. It is well and good that, of course, we do have our laws. I'm not in any way saying that we should now disregard our uniform building bylaws. No, the uniform building bylaws is a general set of laws. But again, as I've always emphasized, a uniform building bylaw is a set of laws. It is not the guide to designing for fire safety. It is a set of laws. Who is it who is supposed to then be the custodian of the science of designing for fire safety, the applications of the right concepts and all that? It actually rests with us as the architects, working together with the entire construction industry, our fellow engineers, the mechanical guys, the civil guys, and the occasional fire experts, the performance specialists, and things like that. We are the curators of standards and of design, because it is all our creation. You know, we are creating more advanced buildings. We are creating building typology that's never been seen before. Just even as recent as a few years ago. So it is for us to fully understand and appreciate the fundamentals, but the fundamental concept of fire safety for us to be able to move forward. So I will have to say, in many cases, our current building codes, in terms of the law, may, in a lot of situations, appear inadequate because by it being a law, it means that it has to be written in a very conservative manner. Yeah. Again, I always use the example of our highway driving speed limits as an example. You say that with the current technology that we have today, with the kind of highways that we've built and the kind of cars that people are driving, surely we should be able to be allowed to drive at 200 kilometers an hour on the highway. But why is it that we still have laws that say, no, it's 110 kilometers. You go 111 kilometers an hour, you've broken the law. Why is that so? It is simply because if the law is really just to provide a framework that that allows all the various situations to at least have a base standard of compliance. If you think that you've got a really fast car and you think that you are a really advanced driver, yes, by all means, exercise your skill in a racetrack. Because when you're on the main road, you are dealing with other members of the public. Not everybody on the road has got a car as fast as yours, and not everybody on the road has got the same driving skills as you. So the general law is to set a particular conservative standard so that everyone toes everyone practices and toes it within that framework. Yeah. But in order for us to advance further, now coming back to building designs, for us to go further on that, we really do need to revisit and understand the fundamentals. Okay, today I'm specifically going to talk about firefighting access and rescue. I will go through the bylaws again, and I'll go through some of the things that most of you will already be very familiar with. So bear with me for the first 10 minutes or so while I go through all of that. Then I will give you some basic illustrations on what are my thoughts on the applications of the things regarding firefighting access and rescue. Right, let's go on now. Right, in terms of firefighting access and rescue, there are really two parts to it. The bylaw is not written specifically into two parts, but it's really about fire appliance access and the provisions for the installations inside the building. So there are two parts. One is fire appliance access of fire appliance from the outside. And the other one is installations within the building. Let's look at fire appliance access. We are all very, very familiar with this now. Clause 140, this is the revised one under UBBL 2012. Fire appliance access, we've got access way to be provided to the site, we all know that. And we got access way to position to the nearer edge of the building, center position to the access opening, tangential to the access opening. Then there's also a mention of something known as an access road. Okay? The access road shall be laid on the incline, not exceeding radius of 1 to 8 and all that. But then there's an access way. So we have three components over here. We've got access way, we've got access road, and we got access opening. Now, as far as our UBBL is concerned, our UBBL started way back 1984. The structure of the UBBL was from 1984, and that in turn was also a collation of all our previous colonial era building codes and building standards. So access way is just one item that has been in the UBBL since day one. It hasn't actually been upgraded. It hasn't actually been redefined. When we did UBBL 2012, this particular clause was brought in, and this one introduced two other elements called the access opening and the access road. But then again, that is about the only mention of access opening and access road in the current UBBL. There are no other description, or there are no other references as to what constitutes an access opening and what exactly is an access road. Yeah, that's the current situation. This is on the outside. Now on the inside, we've brought back in, we pulled some of the description from parts 8, the active systems, into part 7, into the passive systems. Means of access for firefighting and building over 18 meters. You've got the access lobbies, you've got the risers. So there are dry risers at 18 meters and wet risers above 30 meters and so on and so forth. Right, so here we introduce the element of building height with regards to the insulation on how you fight a fire. Okay, so earlier on, you've got access to the building, roads and access ways, and access opening. Then within the building, by reference to a building height, we've got these other means, which is lift, firefighting lift lobbies, and the risers, and etc., etc. Right, let's look back at fire appliance access. UBBL 2012 revision, clause 140. An access way. Access way is an area for the entry, maneuvering, and parking of fire appliance access during firefighting and rescue operation. Then you've got the access road, and then you've got the access openings. Now, we've gone through all of this already earlier. Just to recap, access for personnel will be roads, pavements, parking, availability to water, etc., etc. Yeah, we've all gone through this, but I'm just clarifying it again. And we also know about the systems, the built systems. The external built system on the outside in terms of water provision would be our external hydrants or a water source, a lake or a pond or something, an external water source. Right? Within the premise of a large campus, a large compound, yes, certain situations will require a pressurized hydrant system. Yeah, of course, we are familiar with all these installations of a pressurized hydrant system. We're also familiar now with the installations of sprinkler systems and the commonality of the components involved, right? And most of you will be very, very familiar with this diagram now. And let's have a look. We have the internal systems on the, on the right-hand side, we have the internal systems in the building. Of course, not all buildings have internal systems. If you have a single residential house, there's nothing like this inside there. You have a low-rise, small shop office, there are hardly anything like that in there. Yeah, but these are the internal systems. And on the outside will be something very, very common. Every building in one way or another must have some kind of an access, a road or something. And really, it should be near some kind of a provision of a mass of water or external hydrants. If a fire breaks out, we all know, okay, internal systems were fitted will be kicked into action automatically or by manual intervention. And when the fire engine arrives on the appliance accessway, the whole purpose of the accessway, as I've mentioned many times before, is really for the staging of the fire engines, for the firemen to be able to park the vehicles in a particular manner that will allow them safe distances for their operations, a safe distance away from the building. If the fire is actually leaping out of the building, they have to be a safe distance away. We call that the collapse zone, right? The building a vertical wall like that, aluminum cladding, glass, and all those things. There are things that will fall down from the building if the fire breaks out of the building, right? So we need all these spaces, the little edges and all that. The intention of the appliance accessway, as we always know, is first to park the fire engine, and they're actually doing two things over here. If they have to fight the fire on the outside, that means if the fire is visible on the outside, it's leaping out of the window, they have to fight the fire from the outside as the primary means of controlling the heat to prevent it from spreading. Right? And that's where the fire engine kicks into position immediately. That is the most obvious kind of a fire. Firemen arrives, they see fire leaping out of the window. They immediately, the first company that arrives at the scene would immediately be strategizing and positioning the fire tender so that they can address the fire, depending on the height of the building also and where's the fire, right? And secondary, they need to, if the building is installed with internal systems, they have to connect the fire engines, the pumps, to the external source of water so that they're able to then breach it into the internal systems. Right? We will be talking about the internal systems next week. Right? So today we'll be looking at just this application on the left-hand side of the fire engine on the outside, and what is the relevance of our current bylaws and what are the inadequacies. Okay, we are very, very familiar again with these diagrams. I've shown it before. We will be going through more details on the internal systems next week, right? Just to recap now on the external, we got the access road, we got the access way. We also got the access openings, right? These are the three elements now that we've identified. There's access way, there's access road, and there are access openings. Three elements over here. The current UBBL 2012 really only specifies how you provide for an access way. It doesn't say much or anything about the access road, other than to say that you'll need an access road to bring the fire engine to an access way. And it's even more silent on access opening. There's only one mention of access opening in the UBBL, and it's referenced like a secondary thing. It says that the access way, with regards to this edge over here, edge of the access way, minimum edge 2 meters, maximum edge 10 meters to the access way. The only reference to an access opening is that this edge is to be measured tangentially to an access opening. So you have to measure it this way. Minimum 2 meters and maximum distance from the access opening 10 meters. That is the only mention of an access opening in our current UBBL. Okay, later on I'll tell you what happened and how did it arrive at all this, and what's the relevance of access opening. Access opening, we'll be talking a lot more about it next week, right? So today we'll be talking about access way. And yeah, so on and so forth. And we are also looking at the internal systems, the relevance, the relationship between an access way, this laluan jentera bomba, to an access opening and to the internal systems. There will be the firefighting shaft, the fire pumps, the emergency power generators, the breaching inlets, and the allocations of hydrants. Yeah, and I'm sure we're all very familiar now also with how we position the hydrants. Hydrants should be positioned 90 meters straight line measurement, or we call it a hose line measurement from hydrant to hydrant. But more important, the thing that is most of us actually miss out is the relevance or the relationship between what is known as a breaching inlet to a nearest hydrant. I will be discussing about this, giving you a lot more scenarios of this next week, because this one will then be related to fire, fighting the fire from inside the building. The breaching inlet is generally the point whereby it's like an open tap for you to, for the firemen to be able to bring outside water, primarily from the hydrant, to be able to go through the fire engine and to pump it into the firefighting systems inside the building. So that's a key connection. All the water tanks, the sprinkler tanks, the hose reel tanks, sprinkler hose reel, and the risers, the wet riser tanks, the building's equipped with wet risers. The building has got a certain amount of water ready at any time, right? But as the water is being used with the discharge of the sprinklers and the use of the firemen opening up the internal risers, we need to have a constant supply of water. And this is where the connection, the fireman's criteria, the main job is to bring the water from a hydrant or an external power source to be able to go into the building via a breaching inlet. Okay, and these are the relationships that we require. Again, I will be going into greater detail on this next week with regards to fighting fire from the inside. Now, okay, how do we determine how do we specify the location of a fire appliance access? Actually, the bylaw doesn't give any laws to that. The bylaw is just a law, as I've always said. It just says that it has to be like that. But it really doesn't give much clues as to, firstly, why do you have to do it? And secondly, how should you do it? Yeah. In our UBBL, for all these years, the specification of the appliance access way is dependent on building volume. Generally, the bigger your volume, the greater the percentage of access opening is required to front the perimeter of the building. It's been like that since 1984. And I'm sure prior to 1984 in the old British Ordinance, they would have done the same thing. And it is still the same today. It is still the same today. Now, I'm not saying that the UBBL is outdated in that sense, but yeah, this is one of the many criteria that we should be applying in the designing of fire appliance access. Right? The bylaw just stops here because the bylaw is just a law. Yeah? The bylaw will say you cannot drive faster than 110 kilometers an hour on the highway. But the bylaws does not, nor can you rely on the bylaw to teach you how to drive. Right? That's the whole point that we have to understand over here. Right, so let's look at this one. Fire appliance access. Now, remember, I just said that the UBBL has got no further reference as to how or what are, firstly, access openings into the building and how do you position access openings or how do you specify access openings. Our bylaw is totally silent on that. Right? I'll talk about that next week. The bylaw is also quite silent about the access road, other than to say that, yeah, access road is not the access way. Access road is just connecting roads or the entry roads to allow a fire engine to get onto an access way. And then the access way is only specified via this clause, clause 140, subclause 4, that you are to provide the access way in proportion to the perimeter length of the building. irregardless of the shape and the shape of the building or the height of the building, right? You just take a building volume, and this one applies to all buildings. No references to what purpose group, no reference to is the building a rectangular concrete box with no openings, or is it a condominium with all the balconies exposed to the outside? Absolutely no reference. It is just your building volume, any purpose group, and by the volume, you determine what is the perimeter, what is the proportion of the perimeter of the building that shall have a frontage to an access opening. That is all. The bylaw just asks for that. I am sure all of us in the course of our design and our studies, we have pulled our hair out many, many times with trying to interpret this clause and in trying to put the things together. And Bomba themselves, I'm sure they are also struggling because on one hand, there is this purely prescriptive compliance with the bylaw. On the other hand, we do have to understand what exactly is a fire appliance access. How exactly does a fireman actually use the fire appliance access and all the other accoutrements that comes along with it in the course of fighting a fire. Right? Okay, let's look at a few scenarios here. Okay, by building volume, UBBL, 7,000 cubic meters to 28,000 cubic meters, internal volume of the entire building, not just a compartment. You're required to have 1/6 of the perimeter of the building to have a frontage to an access way. Yeah, we know that, that we are all very familiar as to what that means. And from 28,000 cubic meters to 56,000 cubic meters, it is a quarter of the perimeter. And from 56,000 cubic meters to 84,000 cubic meters is half of the perimeter, the length of the perimeter of the building. And up to 112,000 cubic meters is 3/4. And we all know anything above or beyond 112,000 cubic meters, you need an island site. Right, let me show you some examples. Taking a very hypothetical cube of the building. Let's start with this small cube over here. This building is a 30-meter wide, 30-meter long. Okay, that's a cube. It's essentially a cube. 30 meters by 30 meters by 30 meters high. This building will probably be what? 6 to 8 floors, depending on the floor to floor. The number of floors does not matter in this situation. We are only talking about the building volume. Now, this hypothetical building is a cube of a building, 30 meters, 30 meters, 30 meters high. So that's 27,000 cubic meters. So 27,000 cubic meters is just it's definitely more than 7,000, and it's just a little bit less than 28,000 cubic meters. So the bylaw says you need to have 1/6 of the perimeter of the building fronting a fire appliance access. So that's it, yeah. 30 meters, 30 meters, 30 meters, 30 meters. That's a perimeter length of 140 meters. So 1/6 of, 120 meters. So 1/6 of 120 meters is 20 meters. So there you go. So that is 30 meters. So we have 20 meters. We got 2/3 of one of the face of the building by law, in accordance to the bylaw, requires this frontage of an access way. So far, so good? Good. Now, the same volume. Now I'm going to double the volume. I'm going to just add another cube on top of that cube. So what's the volume of this new hypothetical building now? It's 30 meters by 30 meters, and it's now 60 meters high. 60 meters high would probably equate to a building about 16 stories, 15 to 18 stories, depending on your building. But again, number of floors does not matter. We're talking about the volume, the internal volume of the building. So in accordance with the bylaw, this is just a little bit less than 56,000 square meters. We will require 1/4 of the perimeter to be fronting and access. So there, again, 30 meters, 30 meters, 30 meters, 30 meters, 1/4 of 120 meters is the entire frontage of this one here. So that complies with the bylaw. If you do a building plan like this, send it over to Bomba, as far as fire appliance access is concerned, they cannot say no in accordance to the law. But of course, the fire department has got every right to give you further instructions to do what's necessary. Yeah, that is their privilege, and I think that's something very, very important. They must be able to do that. Right? It's very, very important. Right? But yeah, if you're talking about strict compliance with the bylaw, this is what happens. What if we add another cube to the building? Now we triple the volume of the initial building here. We do that. So now this building is getting pretty tall. The floor plate is only 9,000 square meters. Sorry, the floor plate is only 900 square meters. So it's kind of very, very small floor plate. But it's going kind of high now. So it's 30 meters by 30 meters by 90 meters. So this will equate to probably about, say, 27 stories or thereabouts. And the law says we need half of the perimeter access for fire appliance access. So there again, you go, the same thing over here. And that would be half of the perimeter fire access. That's what we need. Right? That's what we need. So that's half of the perimeter for fire appliance access. Let's just keep going. 30 by 30, 120 meters high now. Now we're into skyscraper territory. This building will be about 36 stories to 40 stories probably. And 108,000 cubic meters, 3/4. 3/4 of the perimeter requires a fire appliance access. Oops, that's only half. Okay, so that's 3/4. And let's go even higher. 150 meters high. How many stories will this building be? 150 meters high, 40 over stories. Really serious skyscraper. So again, it's 30 meters by 30 meters, 150 meters high, and this one requires an island access around here. So see the relationship here. Now again, what is the purpose of a fire appliance access? From the gist of the bylaws earlier, fire appliance access way to front a building, to be tangential to an access opening, to be able to get inside. But primarily, it's actually also to try and fight the fire from the outside, shoot the fire breaks out of the building. So if you look at this same scenario over here, if that building catches fire on the far side of the fire appliance access way, and if the bylaw says that we only need 1/6 of the building to be fronting the building, and we have that minimum compliance, but this particular building has got windows all around, the fire is actually breaking out on the far side. How would a fireman address the fighting of the fire from the outside in this situation? They probably can't, because they can't bring the turntable ladders to the far side because there's no dedicated accessway. There isn't a dedicated accessway, okay? But of course, you all say that this building is 30 meters high, so therefore it's got internal risers. It's got a wet riser, and it's got the internal systems, yes. Then this part over here would be the only available surface area for the firemen to get into an access opening, to be able to get into the building and to attempt to start the fire from the inside. Right? See this situation? because they can't, technically, if you have not given them a fire access way, they can't bring the turntable ladders to the back. They can't fight the fire from the outside. Right? Okay, the same situation. This building has got exactly the same plane between this tall building over here and this one. It's got exactly the same plane, but yet this building, because it's so much higher, our bylaw says that now you have to have an island side. So fantastic. So now we got an island side. So we've got a fire appliance access way all around. Yeah, so the fireman can bring the turntable ladders and park it anywhere. But this is a tall building. What is the fire? Oops, what is the fires up there? It's the same type of a fire like this one, except that it's occurring on the topmost floor. The fire is blowing out of the windows. Just recently, there's another Dubai fire burning on the outside, burning cladding again. That's a different story altogether. But yeah, see, there's the same situation here, but except that this one's occurring 150 meters in the air. You think the firemen would be bringing the turntable ladders over here to drive around the access way and to park the turntable ladder over here and to try and on the outside go up 150 meters to fight the fire? No way. Turntable ladders stop at 18 meters. In America, they've got turntable ladders that go up to 30 meters, right? But in Malaysia, 80 meters, firemen give up trying to fight fire from the outside in terms of height. So you see this discrepancy over here. Now, again, please don't quote me on this. Don't go to Bomba and start saying that I say this. Don't do that, please. Understand the context in which what I'm trying to say over here. What I'm really trying to say is that designing for fire appliance access, just using the UBBL prescriptions of building volume is a little bit, no doubt you'll comply with the prescription, but it probably is not the best thing for you to do. And likewise, when you design buildings like this, which is very slim and very tall, we have a lot of situations out there now, right, where the buildings are packed very close to each other. There are also a lot of tall buildings, very narrow tall buildings built on hill slopes where there are fire appliance access up there, fire appliance access down here, and ooh, how do you connect the two sides, right? But Bomba will say, yeah, the law says you must have a full perimeter. So how do you resolve that? So you can see that the relevance of building volume and the perimeter access may not be the only criteria, or should not be the only criteria for us to apply for the designing of fire appliance access. Okay, let me show you another scenario. The same building block that we are talking about just now, 30 meters by 30 meters by 30 meters high, 27,000 cubic meters, 1/6 of the perimeter access to have the frontage of the fire appliance access. Now I break up this building, same volume, same internal volume, 30 meters, but it's now 90 meters long, and it's only 10 meters high, right? Same volume. I'm just broken it down and I spread it out lengthwise like this. I will still be requiring the same proportion, not the same length, because obviously the perimeter length is now increased, but I'll still be requiring the same proportion, 1/6 of the perimeter for fire appliance access. So bare minimum compliance will be that 30 meters plus 10 meters, that's 40 meters out of this total length of 90 plus 90, 160, 160 plus that. Okay, yeah, it works out that way. Okay, 1/6 of this perimeter will be this frontage over here. Let's go up a little bit. This scenario, 30 meters by 30 meters by 60 meters, we need 1/4. So that's our 1/4. Now I bring this entire volume, I pack it down here, and the building becomes that long. 30 meters by 180 meters by 10 meters. One single continuous building. 54,000 cubic meters, exactly the same volume as that building. And what do I need? 1/4. And what is 1/4 of the perimeter? That is 1/4 of a perimeter. So if a fire breaks out there, okay, I got a certain distance to try and reach that fire. For this scenario, if a fire breaks out there, no way are you going to reach the fire from the outside. Now, this is with strict compliance to the bylaws. So what I'm saying here is this: just minimum prescriptive compliance to the Uniform Building Bylaw does not necessarily mean you have met the performance criteria. When we design things, we must always understand what actually is the performance criteria. The bylaw is just a set of guidelines. It's just a standard framework from which we say, oh, have we exceeded the law? Can we do that? Can we not do that? Can we do that? Can we not do that? Purely by law. But we do have to understand, when we design our buildings, we must really, really understand what are the actual performance requirements for fire safety so that we can allocate it adequately. These are, okay, the next few pictures, I pinched it from the internet. So they are not mine. I did not give any credit for these photographs, but never mind. I won't be publishing these photographs, so just look at it. All these are from the internet, so they're all overseas examples. If you've got a long building and there's a fire there, it's an external fire in this case. External fire means the fire is breaking out of the building, risk of cladding collapse and all that. You look at the mess that's required out here. The way the fire engine, like this particular one, it has to be angled in that particular direction. And the turntable ladder has to be placed in one particular direction to be able to reach. And then there'll be the supporting tenders to be pumping water from the hydrant to feed into the tender to then feed back into this pump, into this engine in the position for it to be able to reach the fire. This is the fire appliance access. Of course, this is the main road outside, but yeah, it's serving the function of a fire access. Fighting fires on high rise up to a certain limit, when the firemen arrives at the scene, how they gauge where to park the fire tenders and the turntable ladders makes a difference. Is the fire up there, then you have to park. If the fire is lower, they actually have to park the turntable ladder further. If the fire is higher, they'll have to park the turntable ladder closer to the building. But as they park closer to the building, there will be the risk of what we call the collapsing zone, which is why we have specified the requirement of the edge to the fire appliance access, the 2-meter edge minimum, 10-meter edge maximum, right? That is to give the firemen a degree of protection from collapsing zone, things that are going to fall down from the edge of the building. An aerial view. Fire appliance access in our mind has always been diagrammatically, we've always drawn it parallel to a building, 6 meter wide, that's it. The bylaw asks for minimum 6 meters, and we give them the minimum 6 meters. But if you see how firemen mix their operations, not necessarily they have the park by the side, because the park by the side, they have no more room to do the staging. Very often they actually come in here and they approach the direction of the fire tangentially. Yeah. Right. Now, going back to how we arrived at the revisions to the bylaw in 2012, where we introduced the concept of the access way, access opening, and the access road. Actually, we pinched it from the Singapore Fire Code. But that's another story as to how is it that we incorporated some things, but we left out a lot of things. I'll talk more about the fire appliance, the fireman's access, the access opening into the building next week, because that one would be on fighting fire from the inside. Yeah? So that would be next week. So today, let me look at this. The Singapore Fire Code has got a more defined way of prescribing fire appliance access. Of course, it is from the Singapore Fire Code that we extracted the description of an access way. we extracted the recognition that not all roads need to be accessways, that there are things known as access roads. And it is also from the Singapore Fire Code and actually international, the access opening. Yeah, in Singapore, they call it the FAP, Fire Access Panel, which is actually an access opening into the building. I will talk a lot more about that next week. We don't have that description in the UBBL other than to say fire appliance access must be tangential to an access opening, right? But you look at the Singapore prescriptions. Singapore prescriptions has got, in terms of the prescription of the perimeter of the accessway to the perimeter of the building, they use two different ways of doing the prescription. Certain buildings go by volume, which is exactly the same as our UBBL. But certain buildings, which is actually most of the buildings, primarily the commercial buildings, groups 3, 4, 5, and 7, are the access openings are prescribed by floor plan area, building plane, but not exactly a building plane. They're looking at the biggest floor plate area of the biggest floor plate. They don't go by building volume. They're going by floor plate. How big is that plate? Right, so if you look at these prescriptions over here, let's just take an example. 4,000 to 8,000 square meters. Square meters now, not cubic meters, square meters now. Half of the perimeter, half of the length of the perimeter of the building would have to have a frontage to an accessway. Now let's take our scenario here. Earlier on, we now added that. So there's a fire. According to the UBBL, it's 1/4 by volume, and we say then it's too far to reach the fire, right? Okay, now if we use the Singapore code, this same building would be by floor area, just one floor, not the volume, not the overall gross built up, just one floor plate, the largest floor plate, 30 meters by 180 meters. It's 5,400 square meters. So that one falls under the category that you need half of the perimeter for a fire appliance access. So if a fire occurs there, what is half of the perimeter? You need a fire appliance accessway this way. If you're building the same building in Singapore, you will be building it this way. Right? So, okay, I think I'm just about at the right time. Okay, I'll stop here. Perhaps I'll hand it back to Sophia for question and answers.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Thanks for the presentation. We may extend the session up to 12:15 or 12:30, depending on the Q&A that we receive. Before we go to the questions from the participants, I have a few questions for you actually. In the case of the horizontal block, I mean, it's quite interesting that, you know, even something as simple as the horizontal block, even though we comply with UBBL, the building is still at risk for rescue. So wouldn't, in normal circumstances, wouldn't we consider that the hydrant positions at 90 meters at the end will be reached by the fire officer, and that would be the way? Is that because the building is quite low, right? But for the case of that, for the tall building, of course, it may be difficult. That one is another another system. You have to come from air, I suppose. So what do you think? The hydrants, wouldn't that be the purpose of the hydrant?
Actually, it is. That is precisely the thing. The hydrants are to be located 90 meters apart, and every building must have access to an hydrant. But the bylaw actually stops there. It doesn't say anymore. It just says that every building must have access to either a hydrant or to a body of water that allows a fireman to be able to pump. And where you install hydrants are to be 90 meters apart. And of course, by inference, as what I've always said many, many times, if you have a hydrant, you must have at least an access road to reach the hydrant. And if your buildings have got internal systems like a breaching inlet, you must at least have a hydrant. The nearest hydrant must at least be no more than 30 meters away from the breaching inlet, and you must have an access way in between. Right. So these are all the little things that are not exactly spelled out in the bylaw in a clause. Yes, you're right. In this situation, if you could comply with all the things you put, naturally you will want to put hydrants here, hydrants here, hydrants here, and yes, you must have a road to reach the hydrant. But what I'm highlighting here is that if you just strictly comply with the minimum parts of the bylaw, and worse, you do selective compliance, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So this one here, we just said, oh, fire appliance access. Yeah, there you go, great. I'm building the building on the slope down here. Okay, I'll have no fire appliance access down there. Fantastic, I complied with the bylaw. I submitted it to Bomba. Bomba looks at it. They said, what are you doing, Mr. Architect? And then you're trying to argue with Bomba, but the bylaw says I only need that. Yeah. So that's really the illustration I'm trying to point out.
Yeah. And then for the case of high rise, that's a different scenario. If that is true, what you're saying is true, there are quite a lot of buildings in KL now which are at risk of rescue in the event of fire. So that requires a completely different rescue system, from air. I don't know how well equipped our Jabatan Bomba to rescue from air.
I will be talking about that next week. And that is actually in particular reference to the fire access opening, the Singapore term, the FAP. In Malaysia, we don't have any more description on the access opening other than that little reference to on the bylaw. Yeah, but we will be talking about in terms of, but in general, what it means is that if the building goes beyond 30 meters, you will not be fighting fire from the outside. That's in general, that's what it means. Yeah? If the building goes beyond 30 meters, you will not be fighting the fire from the outside.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is my illustration over here. This is actually to show the potential fallacy of a one-size-fits-all prescription.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Whereas a low-rise building, which is long and narrow, or worse, a low-rise building which is very flat but very deep, like a lot of big factories that we're doing today, so super mega factories, you would really, really want perimeter access all around, because you'll need a firefighting boom to come up to be able to reach above the roof and to be able to point down at the fire in the middle of the building that's breaking out from the middle of the building. And that boom, that access for the boom to be able to park in this direction to reach in 6 meters. The turntable ladder itself is 15 meters long.
Yeah.
So if you provide, bylaw says fire appliance access at 6 meters, so you give them 6 meters on a big factory lot, it's useless, absolutely useless. It's not going to work.
Okay, so you're going to tell us more about it next week, right?
Yeah, that will be on firefighting from the inside. Yeah.
There's a question here from the participant, from the viewer actually. Is from anonymous attendee. Clause 140, the volume of building is only calculated based on the building above ground floor or accessory level or accessory level only.
That's correct.
Is it inclusive of basement?
No, Malaysia it's only above ground.
Yeah. So Malaysia now is starting into underground building and underground connection within buildings. So what would be the situation here? I would imagine
That will be covered under the requirements for firefighting shafts to go down to basements deeper than 9 meters.
Yes.
So it's like I say, firefighting shafts above. The firefighting shafts is required. The building goes higher than 80 meters above ground and higher than 30 meters, and you need the wet risers, etc., etc. So it's governed by height. But if you turn the whole system upside down, firefighting shafts will be required for basements lower than 9 meters. And there will be the relationship between how we do the building. If there's another building on top of this underground building, the relationship between the top building and the underground building is also specified. Again, there isn't a very, again, the bylaw is just a bylaw. It's just a framework. We really have to read this, that, and pull everything together to be able to come up with the overall picture. If you like, next week I can throw in one of my slides that describes that general arrangement, and we can discuss it further next week.
Okay, another question from Adam Lu. With regard to maximum 10-meter distance between accessway and the building access opening, how do some buildings with a huge piazza between the building and the accessway, in some cases more than 20-meter distance, deal with this restriction?
Okay, the fire appliance access may actually be demarcated, sorry, let me rephrase that. That piazza or that plaza may actually be the fire appliance accessway. And in many instances, it is. Yeah, fire appliance accessway is not a road. It doesn't necessarily have to be a road. It can be grass, provided you design it such that they can support the stationary weight of the fire engine. In Singapore, they prescribe 30 tons. In Malaysia, I think it's 25 tons. I can't quite recall. Right, so it doesn't have to be a road. That's the thing. It's a bit like when we talk about car parking bays. You know, it's a car parking. Car parking, what is a car parking bay? Does a car parking bay need to be pre-mixed? No. You can park cars on grass creek. Many people park cars on pedestrian pavements. That kind of a thing. So it's the same thing with the fire appliance accessway. The fire appliance accessway is just a platform, just a parking platform for the firemen to be able to stage and maneuver the fire appliances. So very often, when you see a plaza where you see, hey, there are no roads around it, how does a fireman get to there? Yeah, they're probably going to climb and physically drive onto the plaza.
Okay, another interesting question is, will there be any new amendments to cater the issue on fire appliance to follow the floor plate area?
Oh, you mean in reference to the
Singapore the access
example,
into the building, I suppose?
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Especially for buildings, I think this is applicable, especially for buildings with slope, you know, access on top level and bottom level. Yeah. So there's always a question of the mid-level or where to define the ground.
That is precisely the point that I'm trying to bring out over here. The Singapore Fire Codes addresses that already. If you look at the Singapore Fire Codes with reference to the appliance access, with reference to the floor plate, and very, very particularly with reference to the FAP, the fire access panels, that one addresses how we can do all that. Here, yes, I know, many projects will struggle. And because it's coming back to our bylaw, the bylaw says something like this. It just says that, oh, if your building has got that volume, you need that. So you don't necessarily are in a position to do that. And likewise, the bylaw also allows you to do that when we know certain buildings are designed such that that is not adequate. Just having that frontage there is not adequate. So that's precisely what I mean. And the law is law. When you have a situation like this, do be mindful, do know your building design. By all means, go beyond this. Provide them with a full perimeter access. And then when you do a building like this, of course, just basic compliance with the law. If you can comply, please comply. But if you cannot comply, then we have to really know what we're doing to find a solution, a practical solution to be able to have a comprehensive proposal two bomba to say, I have a situation in this building because I've got this tall, slim building, but it's on the slope. By volume, I actually cannot comply with this because it means that this fire appliance access will be on a 45-degree angle. But then understanding what is the actual purpose of the fire appliance access in terms of the accessibility to the firefighting shaft, the accessibility to fire access panels from the outside. How do you arrange this configuration to allow that to work? That's really what my point is here today. Yeah, just basic compliance with the bylaws without fully understanding the actual the
limitation.
Yeah,
limitation
the bylaw is a limitation because it is just a framework. Some things it will not be able to cover adequately. Some things it may be over conservative. Yeah, where you're able to. But in any case, you can't bring the plan to Bomba and say, I can't do it, what should I do? Bomba will just say, you're the architect, you sort it out. So this is where it comes in.
I have another question on hydrants. What is Bomba's stand on water source from lake or river?
Yeah,
I have projects that was rejected to use water source because the building is very next to a lake, a big retention pond, huge retention pond, but it was rejected as a valid water source. And that's one. The other is that the responsibilities to maintain hydrant, because you have hydrants within the owner's property and you have hydrants on public road. So does it mean that hydrants within owner's property has to be tested and maintained by owner?
Yes, yes.
So
You'll notice that the hydrants come in two different colors.
Yes.
Some are painted red and some are painted yellow. If they're painted yellow, you have to take care of it. If they're painted red, okay, it's public hydrant. Yeah. So generally, any hydrants within your own campus, within your own compound, where required, of course, would be painted yellow. That also includes the pressurized hydrants for buildings that does require pressurized hydrants, especially like industrial buildings and all that. Hydrants that are painted red are the roadside hydrants, the public hydrants. Yeah, so things within your compound, and also hydrants that are painted yellow would by law also require to have a hose reel cabinet beside it. Because you also have to have the hoses inside your own compound. Yeah, public hydrants definitely you don't have the hose. You have the hose there, it'll be gone, it'll be disappeared. No, it wouldn't be there anymore.
How about the water source? Lake as water source, is that an acceptable source?
It actually is universally is accepted. If you're building a resort out in the middle of nowhere, 10 kilometers away from the nearest public road, you're not drawing city water, you're actually drilling down into the well to get your drinking water. You can't get a public, you can't get source of, you can't get city water to your premise. Yeah, so you do have to design and you do have to allocate this source of water. And again, then you have to.
If it is an alternative, is that an alternative, meaning that you have access to the infrastructure, but you're also very next to a huge retention pond.
Right, yes.
Would that be acceptable?
The alternative source shall not replace the hydrants. If you can get hydrants, the alternative, you cannot say, oh, because I'll put two hydrants on the front of my building, at the back of this giant lake, I won't have hydrants at the back. You can't do that. You can't do that. If you have city water coming in, you must have the hydrants. Then the source at the back is an alternative. Yeah. In large countries, like for example the US, they've got a lot of rural places, and Australia as well, miles and miles away from city water and all that. Yeah, they do install, they call it dry hydrants. Basically, it's a pipe with one end dipped in the lake, and then there's a standpipe. So it's called a dry hydrant. So when the fireman comes, they open up the hydrant and say, there's no water coming up here. Of course, there's no water coming up because it's dipped into the lake the other end. Yeah, so they then connect the fire engine to the pump and they draw the water from the lake. Yeah, so the installation and situation like that is you must install that standpipe with the source of water with one end dipped into the water. Yeah. Of course, I can see the reason why Bomba will not say the external source of water or containment is a primary source of water. Just now you mentioned it's actually a retention pond. Retention pond is rainwater retention pond, right? So if it stops raining, if there's a drought, there'll be no water in the pond. So things like that.
Okay. Maybe we take one last question. Or do you have anything to add in your lecture? But we'll later, is it?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of things, but never mind. I think
Okay. So we are running out of time already.
I'll be.
You catch up in next session. Let's take one more question. This is quite interesting from Chi Weng Ho. Having practiced in both Malaysia and Singapore, the Singapore Code, although prescriptive, comes with a lot of very worded definitions and illustrations, which eliminates a lot of grey areas and difference in interpretation between authorities and architects. Shouldn't PAM and Bomba work together to push for this approach? What say you, please?
We are. That's all I can say. We are. Many years. I've been doing this for since
almost 20 years. Yeah, 2006, 2004.
I think I started the first thing in
how often?
Actually, very often, but I have to admit, personally, you can keep that off the record. Over the last few years, I have not been too active in the face-to-face meetings and all that due to my own work commitments. Yeah, but I am still keeping very much in touch with the ins and outs of these things, and I do contribute whenever I could. I do still contribute. Yeah. But if you talk about Singapore, Malaysia, once you bring up that subject, there will always be politics will come in, and so we better not talk about it in that manner. But yes, we definitely are. PAM as an institution, we actually got quite a few people already as of today who are already very active in the various committees, standards drafting and all that.
Yeah, I think the way forward is actually to invite more members to join the expert groups and to be well versed on this, so that we can contribute more and have more productive output with the authorities to update. Right. And also to create guidelines on performance criteria, which is not included in UBBL. That is another thing.
It is. There is an ongoing committee now, of which I'm in it. It has been started already on the drafting of guidelines.
For performance criteria.
Not the guidelines, but criteria. Standards criteria for the direction of a performance-based design. We started. We were we had our first meeting just about, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks prior to us being locked down, just before the MCO. So the second meeting is not going to be seen anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have started.
Okay, Lee Siong, I think let's end the session here. We will continue again in next session next week, and probably even after that in June. So on behalf of the viewers, I would like to thank you for sharing your thoughts and your whatever you call it with us today. And thank you to Kansai for sponsoring the event. And to members, remember to take down your sign-in code and sign-out code. And now Salam or the tech team will publish on screen the link of questionnaires for you to complete in order to complete your participation record this would only be applicable to those who would like to apply for CPD points. Salam, are you there? Okay, so our online series will end. We will have two more in May. One is on the quality of works, and the other is on firefighting. And then we will stop for Ramadan and Raya. We will start new sessions or new season in June with more topics for discussion. So like mentioned by Architect Lee Siong just now, the benefit of online series is actually it close the gap between the audience and the speakers, and it also open up to more topics or discussions from various members. So I would like, as a chairman of CPD committee, I would like to invite everyone to inform us if you have any topics to share. Send email to PAM online series. We will have a look at it and we will put into the schedule. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and see you again next week.